I feel like as a diaspora, I have this kind of unique position where I get to see both an inside and outside perspective. And I've noticed how externally, I feel like so many people have reduced the value of forest to maybe only its carbon storage potential, for example. Whereas inside the communities, we see that when we protect the forest, we are protecting our source of life. For me, like indigenous people have always known that our physical health, our spiritual health, our emotional health, and our mental health are deeply related. So when I talk about the forest as the health of the people, I think that also includes forest being the mental health of the communities. And there's a lot of ways in which this idea of interbeing and the connection between climate or nature and mental health is manifested in our culture. I would say one of the main sources of mental ill health is loss of land. With the loss of land comes loss of livelihoods. Many communities whose livelihoods depend on the integrity and the existence of the forest. Some communities, for example, in Borneo, sell forest honey, which is something that they can't access if they don't have their forest or their land. And that's just an example in which the loss of land and forest can lead to a loss of livelihood, which we know can cause social economic distress, which leads to a lot of just anxiety and mental ill health. Another one I would say is with the loss of land or separation from land, there's also this loss of identity and way of life, which I think is the pinnacle of indigenous resilience. Without that identity and way of living and closeness to nature, our sense of identity is almost like broken down and disrupted, which can cause some kind of, like identity crisis or lack of confidence in ourselves. And we maybe the culture that we've managed to practice for so long because we have our forest is now suddenly gone, and maybe some community members can feel like their purpose in life is suddenly gone because there's no connection at all again from the land. And there are many names to this. There's a term called solastalgia, which is the distress that is specifically felt by land-based communities. But whatever you call it, I think indigenous identity is such a big part of our resilience. And when you take away the land and the forest that is that source of identity, that can lead to a lot of mental stresses as well. In indigenous communities particularly, I think there's a very strong idea of intergeneration and continuity. I'm thinking about, the 5-year-old kids or the soon to be 1-year-old kids who are going to grow up in such an undeserving way of living. It hurts. As a young climate activist, it's just exhausting to be in a space where the urgency is real, but the pace of progress is so slow. Like the recent COP, for example, many people were celebrating the fact that we have fossil fuels finally in the outcome text of this conference, but it's 28 years too late. I recognize that there's progress in there, and I think, celebration can sit in the same space as disappointment. But I also know that we need to be working in a much faster pace. And as a young activist, there's so much pressure that we have the responsibility to create change, to lead the difference that we want to make and things like that. I partially blame it on the media as well for making that become a pressure for us. So my identity, just simply as a young person in this space, is causing so much anxiety and just tiredness. Like the hard work that many of us are doing is not reflected in the progress of the movement overall. There's just I think, very limited understanding still of what climate change is, of what mental health is. And unless we build the capacities for our region to understand these concepts, I don't think we'll get to the connection part. So that's also something that that's a shift that I feel we need to be seeing in the region before we talk about addressing the nexus of the two. When we take care of our well-being and when we take care of our resilience, that's when we can be of service to the movement. And so I'm trying to build this sense of hope and confidence and assurance in myself as well, in the sense that I know that I'm doing my best, and that's enough right now. And I'm doing my best to move the community forward, to move the campaigns and advocacies forward. And we just need, the rest of the world to have that self-confidence and reassurance and their work as well. And when that comes together, I think the constellation will call for the collective changes and shifts that we need to see in order to address all of these nexuses.